So who is gay?
Who's gay? You guys. Tucker Carlson just dropped a bombshell video episode 22, and I wanted to react to this video. In this video, this guy named Larry Sinclair, they said that he came out before with this same claim, this story, that Barack Obama and him had a sexual relationship, while Obama and him was doing, I guess, crack cocaine. So I wanted to do a live reaction with you all. Um, do I believe it? I don't. I don't. I don't think I believe it, but I haven't heard. I think I need more proof for him to say, "Oh, Barack is gay." But I don't know what Barack does in his closet. I know it's rumored that Michelle Obama is a transgender. I Like I said, I don't know, and I think I find it offensive when a woman has kids and birth children, and someone comes along and say, "Oh, she's a man." I find that highly offensive. But they're saying that now Barack is gay, and this is a rumor that they've been trying to keep hush hush. And so Tucker Carlson decided to interview him. This is what ran across my feed. This is him. This is like a you know a snippet of the interview, and it's very intriguing. Once you makes you want to watch it. Let's take a look.
You're just a guy who's in town for the night, and it sounds like you're looking to party.
Yeah, pulled up in a bar outside, and there's this guy that's introduced to me as Barack Obama. I had given Barack $250 to pay for coke. I start putting a line on a CD tray to snort, and next thing I know, he's got a little pipe and he's smoking. So I just started rubbing my hand along his thigh to see where it was going, and it went the direction I had intended it to go.
Even though you had sex with him twice, you did cocaine with him, watched him smoke crack twice, you had no idea who he was.
I had no idea who he was.
Let me just ask the obvious question. What was Obama like on crack? Is it your sense that that's who Obama is, just transactional, or that he's bisexual, or like, what is this?
It definitely wasn't Barack's first time, and I would almost be willing to bet you it wasn't his last.
The guy's running for president, and credible information comes out that he's smoking crack and having sex with dudes. That seems like a story.
Well, it would be a story if the media really cared about telling people the truth.
So that's what ran across my feed, and we're gonna react to that today. We got some other stories that's in the media. Elon is trying to sue. He's suing Soros, some group that Soros is a part of. So we'll discuss that and some other stuff that we got to discuss. But let's pull up this Barack Obama interview. Now, you guys put in the chat, we're going to, I'm going to react to it. They probably demonetize this. I'm not for sure.
Keynote
Because
address.
they might put a copyright strike on it. So I'll try to make sure I'm commenting frequently throughout the video. It's about a 40-minute video. Let me just put it on 1 2/4 speed. Okay, so here it
The
is.
Democratic convention in Boston. And when he walked to the podium, probably only a small percentage of people in the room knew how to pronounce his name. He was totally unheard of. No one knew Barack Obama. At the time, he was a state senator in Illinois. 4 years later, he once again spoke to the Democratic convention, but this time as the nominee. Meteoric doesn't begin to describe it. How did this happen? Well, the outlines are fairly well known, though rarely talked about. A small group of Democratic donors, mostly in Chicago, decided that Barack Obama was their guy. He was the vessel for their ambitions. They paid for his campaign. They paved the way for his rise. He spent 2 years pointlessly in the United States Senate preparing to run for president in 2008, and of course, in the end, he won. But the question was, who was this man? Where did he come from? What did he spend his life doing before he became president of the United States? Well, the news media, whose job it is to answer those questions, spent the entire 2008 campaign trying to keep you from knowing the answers. By Election Day, most Americans knew only one thing about Barack Obama, other than he was handsome and a good communicator: hope and change. But they knew nothing about him, his origins, what he believed, and legitimate questions about those facts were turned away, as they often are, with the claim, "That's a conspiracy theory, you're crazy, shut up!" One of the most interesting moments in the 2008 campaign occurred when a man, like Obama himself, came from out of nowhere to recount his experiences with Barack Obama, the man.
Now, I can say in hindsight, and you probably heard me talking about Barack, in hindsight, when Barack came about, he only spent 2 years in Senate. And only person that knew Barack Obama, or how we was introduced to Barack Obama, was because of Oprah Winfrey. That I remember that like it was yesterday. Oprah Winfrey was in the he was talking, and Oprah Winfrey was in the stands, and she was saying, she was just, there and basically signing on to Barack's campaign. And it was some other powerhouse people there. So nobody knew where Barack Obama came from. Just nobody. And they, the media showed that he was a family man. He's been married for several years. And it was like the all-American family. So I can say that that account is true.
In Chicago, decided that Barack Obama was their guy. He was the vessel for their United States communicator, hope and change. But they knew nothing about him, his origins, what he believed, and legitimate questions about those facts were turned away, as they often are, with the claim, "That's a conspiracy theory, you're crazy, shut up!" One of the most interesting moments in the 2008 campaign occurred when a man, like Obama himself, came from out of nowhere to recount his experiences with Barack Obama, the man. His name was Larry Sinclair, and he told an amazing story. He said that in 1999, he had encountered Barack Obama in Illinois, had sex with Barack Obama, and then used cocaine with him. Sinclair went on to make these claims publicly at the National Press Club in Washington, to sign a sworn affidavit, and to take a lie detector test. But he was dismissed. In fact, he was attacked. Obama shills like Ben Smith of Politico batted the claims out without refuting them. They're absurd. And the rest of the media followed suit. But the claims weren't absurd. We're not claiming they're true, but they were certainly credible. This was a first-hand account of Barack Obama's behavior by someone who was willing to sign a sworn affidavit to that effect. So the question is, whatever happened to Larry Sinclair? What's his life been like since? That's an interesting story. It turns out Larry Sinclair is still alive. He lives in Mexico. But today, he's in our studio, and we're happy to have him. Larry Sinclair, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Where did you meet Barack Obama?
It was by accident. I was in the Chicago area in '99 for Lee Duke's graduation from the Naval Academy.
Who's Lee Duke?
He's basically my godson.
Okay.
I had hired a limousine service.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you live in Chicago then?
No. I was actually living in Colorado. I had flown in the night before.
Okay.
So had hired a limousine service, had made the driver aware that if Lee couldn't leave the base, because once they graduate, some of them actually get their assignments and they're shipping out and they can't leave the base, that I was still interested in going out. And had asked the driver if he knew anybody that was available that might want to show me, Chicago. And he said he did. So
well, who was the driver?
His name was Jamir Multani. It was with 5-star limo.
So you're just a guy who's in town for the night, and it sounds like you're looking to party, actually.
Yeah,
that's what you're really saying.
Yeah. Well, I was in town for a few nights, but yeah, I was definitely looking to party. And
did you make that clear to the driver?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There was no misunderstanding.
How direct were you about that?
Extremely.
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 Okay.
Yeah. There was no doubt what I was looking for.
Okay.
And he picked me up at my hotel in Gurnee and drove into Chicago, pulled up in a bar outside, and there's this guy that's introduced to me as Barack Obama. It was literally that casual.
Had you ever heard of him?
No.
Did the driver know him?
Yep. The driver definitely knew him because the driver said that he was a friend.
Interesting. How would the driver be friends with Barack Obama?
I only found out later, dealing with a reporter from Bloomberg News, that apparently the limousine company had been doing business with Tony Resco, that at the time was somehow affiliated
Was
with
in
Barack
Obama's
Obama.
orbit.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. So he knew Barack Obama, and in his view, Barack Obama liked the same kind of partying you were looking for.
Yep.
Okay. So sex and drugs and upwards.
The sex part I wasn't so sure about until, of course, you make your move, but it became obvious very quick. The coke part I thought was interesting because of the way that I had brought it up.
So I'm stepping on your story. So you pull up, and I apologize. So you pull up to this bar. The driver is basically scouting some dude for you to hang out with.
Correct.
There's this guy, Barack Obama. Have you ever heard of Barack Obama?
Never. Okay. Never. We're having drinks. I mentioned the fact that I could use something to wake up. I was extremely exhausted.
So you went into the bar?
Yes, sir.
What kind of bar was it?
I'm trying to remember. I've been trying to remember the name. I know that the glasses had 3 X's on them because I remember taking one home for a friend of mine.
But I mean, generally characterize it. Was it?
It was
working class bar,
no,
gay bar, strip bar?
It was upscale, quiet. Wasn't really that really didn't have a lot of energy to it. It was more relaxed, more like a lounge as opposed to somewhere where people would go and get loud and crazy.
Yeah.
Which made it easier to talk.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop. This guy, to me, he does have gay mannerisms. It seems like he's lived a hard life. As far as doing drugs, he's missing teeth. Maybe he just got a bad dental plan. But the way his mannerisms are, he seems pretty gay. Jim McQueen, he said, "Damn, double wrist bracelet, he must have been busy." He must have been busy. You stop it. I have a question. Where did they get the 2 little girls from? That's why I say I don't think when they rumored Michelle is a trans, I don't think she's trans. I think she's actually a woman. People say, oh, she don't have any pictures of her being pregnant. I don't have any pictures of me being pregnant. And I got pregnant after her. So like back then it wasn't popular. Oh, take a picture when you got a big old belly. So I that's why I say I don't know about the Michelle rumor. Now, can Barack be gay and still have children? Absolutely. He didn't cut off his male parts. He just liked to dibble and dabble in the brown sauce. Allegedly. Okay, we allegedly. So let's continue.
But like I said, when I brought up the fact that I could use something to wake up, he immediately knew what I was referring to, had made it clear that I was looking for coke, and I really was, and had made the suggestion that he knew where we could get it, and we left to go get it.
Interesting. Did he say what he did for a living?
Nope. I had no idea that he was a representative in the Illinois House. I had no idea he was in politics. I just knew that he was supposedly married and at the time was going through some issues with the marriage.
Did he said that?
That was made clear. Yeah.
Huh. Did he say what kind of issues?
No.
Do you remember? No. So you said, I'm looking for something to wake up. He knows you're referring to cocaine. I know where to get it. What happens next?
We get back in the limo. The driver takes us wherever it is that Barack had instructed him to take us. I had given Barack $250 to pay for coke. He gets out, comes back. I start putting a line on a CD tray to snort.
And you're in the limo?
Yep.
Driving or parked?
No, the driver's driving.
Yep.
I start to put a line on a CD tray, and I just happen to notice that he pulls something else out of his pocket. And next thing I know, he's got a little pipe and he's smoking. So I don't have an issue with it. I mean, some people smoke, some people snort.
Smoking the cocaine.
Yes. So as I'm doing a line, I just start, this is the part where you kind of make your move to see where things are going. So I just started rubbing my hand along his thigh to see where it was going, and it went the direction I had intended it to go. So the night became somewhat active sexually and drug-wise in the limo.
So you hit on.
I would like to see, like, who's the limo driver? Like, okay, so who can corroborate this story? He said Tony Resco was affiliate of his, but not the limo driver per se. But he named off the limo company. I would like to know who was the limo driver and who could corroborate this story. But right now, it's all hearsay. It's his word against Barack. And of course, Barack is not going to respond. I mean, for what? He's out of office. He has no reason to respond to this. But it's interesting, right?
On him. Did he seem shocked by that?
Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, if you're smoking crack with a stranger in the back of a limo, like, you got to imagine things might go crazy places.
Well, not only imagine it, I look at it this way. I've done a lot of crazy things in my lifetime.
We could tell you done a lot of crazy things in your lifetime.
Pretty good judge of character, and I pretty much know whether or not I can move in a certain direction with an individual. I didn't feel that I was going in the wrong direction. I just wasn't so sure how much I could trust the individual at first. And that was probably one of my bigger concerns. But the fact that I was already becoming somewhat buzzed, you kind of throw caution to the wind.
You weren't sure you could trust the individual. What does that mean?
When you meet someone out of the blue and you go to a level that you're doing drugs with, or you're giving money to purchase drugs, or even for sexual activity, you have to be sure that you can trust them. And when I say trust, I mean that you're not going to end up being robbed, or that you're not going to end up having a knife stuck into you, from one direction or another, or that you're not going to pull up somewhere and all of a sudden the car door is going to open and you got 5 people pulling you out of it.
Totally.
That's what I mean when I say trust someone.
And you've been around at this point in your life, big time.
Yeah.
Right. So probably not your first time in a situation like this.
Not at all. And that's why I said I pretty much know where I can go and at what point.
So you start rubbing his leg, and I think, I'll just be totally blunt with you, like, a man who's not into gay sex would be like, whoa, settle down.
Trust me, if it was something that you were not interested in, and you're right, I've had guys that I read wrong that would literally try to break your hand.
For sure.
If you went in that route. So it's not like this was something that he wasn't into.
Maybe, Jim, that's what happened to his hands. He ran into the wrong individual and he read the wrong. Or maybe it's a carpal tunnel bracelet. Your wrist is broken, or you doing one motion all the time, so now you got carpal tunnel. But anyway,
it's not something that he was shocked by. Shocked by, you don't get excited and you don't unbutton your pants and you don't just sit there and let it happen. So it definitely wasn't Barack's first time. That much I'm absolutely certain of. And I would almost be willing to bet you it wasn't his last.
So you performed oral sex on Barack Obama. You did. In the driver's up front?
Yep.
And he's cool with this?
The driver has the partition up. He didn't have a problem with it. He didn't put it down for any reason.
I mean, he kind of set up the whole thing for this in the first place.
Exactly. And I have a funny feeling he had no bones to pick with it as far as what took place in it.
So what happened after?
Afterwards, I actually went back to my hotel. I had specifically asked that he drop Barack off first, but for some reason he and Barack chose that they would drop me off at the hotel first and then he would take Barack. So Barack actually made the drive out to Gurnee, which is a suburb outside of Chicago, to the hotel for me to be dropped off.
What hotel was it?
It was the Comfort Inn in Gurnee.
Ooh, it sounds depressing.
Well, you have to remember it was 99.
Yeah.
And it was close to the Great Lakes Naval facilities.
Yeah.
But I got dropped off. They left. The next day was somewhat interesting because he ends up showing up at my hotel room, which I thought was somewhat weird, but
he wanted some more.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say he showed up, he just
he showed up unannounced to his own. You gave him a blowjob. He was like, "Oh, drop him off first." And so he showed up to the, and I could see if he's a representative, I wouldn't want him to know where I live. So he dropped the guy off at the hotel room first. And then the next day he showed up at the hotel because he wanted some more action.
Just
He showed up. I mean, I had no warning. I was in the room. There's a knock on the door. I opened the door and he's standing there. And he's standing there with more Coke and he comes in and it was just like a quick, rehash or rerun from the night before.
exact same program.
Exact same program.
Was he smoking again?
Yep.
So Barack Obama smokes crack and then you perform oral sex on him.
And like I said, the only reason I had come out about it is I had reached out to the campaign even in 2007. Only because I saw all these kids getting excited about it.
Okay, wait, so how did that end? Like,
Same way. You get off, you finish smoking, you leave.
thanks, bye?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. What did you think of him?
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was definitely a con. But
What do you mean by that?
well, in my life at that point, you made it clear. I had already been around.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So when people are doing things because they actually really enjoy it, or they're sincere, or they're looking, for a connection, or they're doing something because they're looking for an in, or they're looking for a hook, or it's a game.
Yeah.
So for me, I felt that it was a game for him. It was like, okay, what am I going to get out of it? Or is there something I can get out of it other than just, the sexual part?
Right.
And lucky for me, I wasn't going back to Chicago anytime soon, so it really didn't matter.
So you were left with a bad taste in your mouth.
Something, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This is a blind reaction. If you're a man, it doesn't matter, gay, straight. If you're a man, how can another man coerce you to do something unless you just straight a crackhead? Like, oh, I'll suck your whatever for some crack. I mean, and then now you're saying, oh, he was a con artist. Why? Because he didn't leave his number for you? Just like that. This is the part I'm questioning. Like, okay, this is a transaction. You're basically a crack whore. I provide the crack and you're gonna suck me off. That's why I showed up. But if you were like taking the back and you wasn't down for it, you could have just turned him away. Like, no, that was a one-time deal. I don't feel like it. It's not like he came with some bullies, and it's not like Barack Obama has a threatening physique. So him saying that's, I think he just kind of threw the story off. Now it's not really believable. Anyway, let's see what he's going to say.
Did you talk to him again?
I did not. In fact,
And did you have any idea, even though you had sex with him twice, you did cocaine with him, watched him smoke crack twice, you had no idea who he was?
I had no idea who he was until I'm sitting in my house in Tequila, Nayarit, Mexico in 2004. And he walked on that stage
In Boston?
in the DNC convention. And I literally hit the floor. I just hit the floor and was...
Wait, so you're watching the Democratic convention from Mexico?
I was laughing.
And the guy that smoked crack in your Comfort Inn with you?
I was laughing so hard.
And you were sure it was him?
I was absolutely positive.
How?
I don't forget people I've met. I don't forget people I have spent time with. I just don't.
And just to restate, because I think you affirmed this, but he used his real name when you asked him.
Yes,
Did he call himself Barack or Barry?
Barack.
Barack.
And so did the driver. And that's why at first when everybody was referring to him as Barry, I just didn't understand or catch on. Because like I said, I didn't know that much about him other than the fact that, hey, you hook up, today it's Grindr. Back then it was,
The limo driver.
yeah, a limo driver or a bartender, You ask and somebody knows somebody or somebody doesn't.
Amazing. Amazing. So you're sitting there in Mexico watching this, and you think, that's the guy I had sex with who smoked crack it with me.
Yep.
And what do you think?
Like I said, I just started cracking up. I freaked out. I had even pointed out to some friends of mine that were at the house that night, and I told them, I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, I blew this guy twice, and they just start cracking up. But that's the thing about me. I've never been in the closet. I've never hid. I mean, I'm always very direct and blunt. Yeah. And, I'm just like, this is unreal, and I had no idea that he was going to run, in 2008, but I was back from Mexico. But it was a strange feeling sitting there watching him walk across that stage and realizing who he was.
Huh. So what did you do? You said you reached out to the campaign?
Well, I didn't do anything in 2004, but when he announced his run for 2008, I did reach out to the campaign in late 2007 because I had seen a lot of these college kids talking about how thrilled they were, how there was a candidate who was completely honest about his entire life, his drug use, what he did when he was in school. The constant back and forth. 1 minute is, yes, I did cocaine when I was younger, or no, I never did cocaine, but I smoked weed. So I just simply pointed out that all I was asking was, look, why don't you just simply come out and say, I did coke and I've done it as recently as 1999. Just tell the truth. Put it out there and be honest and let it stay as the truth rather than this back and forth. Never did hear anything back from them immediately.
Who did you reach out to? Do you remember?
I reached out to actually David Axelrod's office in Chicago. I'm trying to remember the letters because it was actually 3 letters.
And did you say, I had sex with Barack Obama?
This is the interesting part. My first contact with the campaign never mentioned the sex whatsoever. That was actually brought to my attention by someone who eventually reached out to me in late 2007, claiming to be with the campaign, but wasn't with the campaign.
What do you mean that was pointed out to you? So you never told anyone in the Obama campaign you'd had sex with Barack Obama?
Not in 2007, no.
Interesting. But they knew?
Yep.
How? Who? Well, that's weird.
I'm assuming Barack himself, because the phone calls that I got in late 2007 came from a gentleman that I have repeatedly identified as Donald Young. And it was Donald Young who had mentioned to me that.
So do you guys really believe this? So he's saying that he never mentioned the sexual act with each other, but Barack exposed himself, I guess, to somebody else, saying, oh yeah, I got, some head from some random guy twice. It's like I said, is this believable? even the letters, I don't know if you guys remember the letters that Barack wrote these letters to his ex-girlfriend, and he puts in the letters that how he dreams about having relations with another man every night. I mean, why would you write that in a letter? I mean, and then you have these dreams of running for office. Even if he's not running for presidency, he was like in office. That kind of stuff does get out when you're just in a political position. It doesn't matter how high you are. I mean, that could have just ruined his career. Especially you're supposed to be married and a family man, and you have 2 little kids at home. I really find that kind of odd.
The campaign was not going to acknowledge the sex and the drug interaction. And I was somewhat taken back because, like I said, I had never mentioned the sex to the campaign at all at that point. I had in 2008, but I had not in 2000.
Okay, that is amazing. And I want to get to who Donald Young was in just a minute, but I apologize for being a bad interviewer, but let me just ask the obvious question, what was Obama like on crack?
Actually, And I hate to say this because some people are going to think I'm really crazy. I knew a lot of people that smoked it because I was in Miami in the early 80s when it became quite popular. Similar to a friend of mine that I knew in Miami, gets extremely high, calm, almost euphoric. And then as it starts to come down, you know, the twitching and the looking, anything that looks white that's sitting on the seat or the floor, you assume is another piece that fell off that, you know, you can pick up and smoke. But while he was high, pretty much the same.
Pretty controlled.
Pretty controlled, euphoric, talkative, but not really saying anything.
So it was like his presidency.
A lot like it.
Was it your impression, and of course you would, strictly speaking, no, but was it your impression that this was the first time you'd ever smoked crack?
No, no. You don't, first of all, you don't buy crack, get in a limo and have a pipe in your pocket if it's the first time you smoke crack. You just don't.
That makes sense. So I've read about your story to the extent it's been written about, not very much. But I'd never read that Donald Young, this man Donald Young, called you and told you that he knew you'd had sex with Barack Obama.
That was the contact in late 2007 that I had that originally came under the guise that they were part of the Obama campaign.
So who was Donald Young?
Donald Young was a choir director and a school teacher. He was a choir director at Jeremiah Wright's church in Chicago, the same church that Barack Obama went to. He was also a very openly gay black man, but very well respected.
Did you know him?
I had never met him. I had not even realized that the person who was communicating with me had been killed until a good 2 months after.
So I'm going to get to that. So Donald Young is the choir director at Jeremiah Wright's church.
Yes.
And is it publicly confirmed that he knew Barack Obama?
Oh, yes. Yes. Donald Young's own mother has repeatedly said that she feels that her son died to protect Barack Obama.
It's just interesting that Donald Young would have called you. He's not working directly for the campaign that we know of.
Exactly.
But somehow he has a copy of your letter. It sounds like maybe Donald Young was on cleanup duty.
Somehow he has my phone number. Exactly. And that's exactly what it was. Because like I said, the first calls were, I was led to believe that he was with the campaign. The last conversation that I'd had with Donald Young, he had actually come clean and said that he had been asked to call me and that his job was to get as much information from me as far as who I had spoken to, who I had given any information to, and to get that to them. He had told me to be careful, to watch myself, and to understand that the Barack Obama campaign was not in any way, shape, or form going to acknowledge anything or come out about anything. And he had made it clear that he had known Barack for quite some time and had had an intimate relationship with Barack for quite some time.
He told you that?
Yep. And that's when I knew that I could at least trust what I was being told. Originally, I had made it clear I didn't feel comfortable with the phone call because something just didn't seem right. But after a couple of calls, it started to all fall into place. And I had said the same thing to myself.
Wait, so you didn't know Donald Young existed?
Nope.
It sounds like you're not very political anyway. You weren't.
I wasn't at the time.
And you were just annoyed that Obama was talking about cocaine and lying about it.
I was extremely annoyed.
But the sex part had nothing to do with it.
No.
Then Donald Young, who you don't know, never heard of, calls up and says, by the way, I know you had sex with Barack Obama. I did too.
Yep. Pretty much.
I mean, this is a longer conversation, which we can have in a minute, but I mean, Obama has a wife and kids, and he's telling America what a great family man he is. Is that, maybe you've seen this a lot. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, in 2008, I made it clear that Obama was having marital problems in '99, and everybody in the world said that I was crazy, didn't know what I was talking about. And yet, what was it, 6 months ago, Barack Obama comes out and tells the world that exactly what I said was the truth. In 1999, he and Michelle came very close to divorce. Really. 15 years later, what I say is the truth, but 15 years earlier, I'm a liar and a fraud. It's interesting how things eventually come out. But yes, believe me, I've known guys that were completely happily married that will screw around with another man on a weekly basis and think nothing of it.
Huh. Is it your sense that that's who Obama is, just transactional, or that he's bisexual, or like, what is this?
No, my feeling that Barack Obama is probably, he's definitely bi. I think there is a lot of transactional qualities to him, because I think whatever he does, it is looking for a hook or looking for a benefit.
Yeah. That's consistent with his public persona too, I would say.
But I see his benefit of getting sexual relationship. I think that's what he means. Now that I'm thinking about it, his story does sound believable. Some parts is kind of sketchy, like, okay, maybe he perceived it differently. I don't think he's lying on the accounts though. I think those interactions were um true, but I think the way he described Barack as, oh, he's trying to get something out the relationship. I don't know. He's trying to get his sexual appetite filled since he has to put on this face that he's a straight man follower of Christ. You know, I'm a married man, follower of Christ. So I got to put this cloak on saying I'm a follower of Christ. Look at me. I'm a, you know, I do things the right way. I don't know if you guys remember years ago, this is when Barack was in office, and I don't know if it was an Oprah interview or if she was on Ellen DeGeneres. Michelle, she was complaining. They asked her, okay, how was it being married to Barack? And one point of the interview, I wish I could find it, but one point of the interview, she was saying, yeah, you know, it was kind of rough because some days, some nights he think he could work all night. She used the term work all night, and she would actually have to tell him, no, you need to come home. And she tried to describe it, oh, he was so much into his work, you know, but he probably was out having extramarital affairs. And, you know, when you're married and you think your husband's having extramarital affairs, you could do one or two things. Start snooping around, and, you know, if you think something's out there and if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. Or you could just like, no, get your stuff together. You're supposed to be a family man. And we got to remember, Michelle, she was on her career path too with you know, her journey into, I think she was in the medical field. I think she ended up being a director of some hospital or something like that. But she was a big time executive by the time they made it to office, or Barack made it to office. So I don't know if you guys remember that interview. So, I mean, like I said, it's kind of sounds pretty believable. But I think his perceived notion of Obama, he's saying, oh, I want to get something out of it. And but you're a crackhead. But I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I'm taking it wrong. He means Barack want to get something out of it to satisfy his sexual appetite, basically. And I don't know you. So if I could have sex with you and I don't know you, or you have oral sex with me and I don't know you, and you go out on about your merry way, how can you prove that story? It's not in my hometown.
So Donald Young calls you. You actually sounds like you kind of liked and trust Donald Young.
I did.
Did he say how long he'd had a relationship with?
He had just said that they had been intimate for years.
Intimate for years. And what happened to Donald Young?
Donald Young was shot dead in his apartment, second floor in Chicago, Illinois. I think it was December 23rd of 2007.
Yeah.
According to the police report and the death certificate, multiple gunshot wounds.
Yeah.
Close range, no forced entry, second floor apartment, yet not a single resident in the building heard a single shot, but yet they can hear every shot that's fired in the street outside.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah Wright announces that Donald Young's dead earlier that morning, even before it was announced, even before he was declared dead. I mean, a lot of it just didn't make sense.
This is all public, and you can look this up, and it's still on the internet. Tell us about Donald Young's mother.
Norma Jean Young actually is a former Chicago Police Department employee.
Really?
Really. she had worked for the Chicago PD. I had spoken with his sister Lorraine shortly after I realized that he was the gentleman that I had been speaking with. There were people at the time that were attempting to have Lorraine and other members of Donald's family file criminal complaints against me with Chicago because they wanted me arrested. They were trying to get the family to say that I was trying to con them or something. To my knowledge, they never did any such thing. But at the same time, I continue to respect Lorraine and the rest of the family. But Mrs. Young had finally come out and told David Nelson, who was a reporter that I knew out of Minnesota, that she was convinced that Donald had been killed, that his death was to protect his friend Obama. And she confirmed that they had, in fact, been extremely close for years.
I mean, did she confirm that they'd had sex, Obama and Donald Young?
Her confirmation wasn't referencing, or she did not specifically say that they were sexually involved. She just simply said that they had been intimate friends for years.
But she believed the Obama campaign was responsible.
She believed that his death was due to protecting Barack Obama. And I made the same argument that people said, well, how are you accusing Barack? I said, I'm not accusing Barack of anything. But I said, I'm willing to bet my life that Barack Obama and Jeremiah Wright both know or have knowledge of who killed Donald Young. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, this was a guy who was clearly going to be the next leader of the world. You know, people kill each other over insurance claims, over bar fights. There's a lot at stake here. I have no knowledge of this. I'm not alleging a murder by the Obama campaign or its allies, but it's not. It's not a crazy thing to wonder, obviously.
No, and the only thing after I realized what had happened with Donald Young, the only thing I'd ever asked was the same thing that I had done. And I said, you know, if you want to accuse me of being crazy, you know, release your phone records. You know, turn over your phone records from your phone in '99. Turn over your phone records for the last year. I mean, it's that easy. If you've got nothing to hide, it's not like they're going to be made public. Turn them over to authorities. Let them investigate. Let them look. But no.
So now seems like a fair time to ask about your motive. So your initial motive was you were annoyed because you believed or you knew that Obama was lying about his drug use.
Right.
But then after the Donald Young exchange, where he brings up the sex that you had with Obama, what was the point at which you decided, I'm just going to bring this to the country, I'm going to go public?
Well, in January of 2008, after having contacted the campaign yet again, I had decided, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to make a YouTube video and put it up, which I did. It wasn't because I was looking for anything out of it. In fact, if I had even stopped long enough to anticipate the blowback and the consequences of speaking out, me being me, it probably would not have stopped me. It might have slowed me a little bit, but it would not have stopped me. But
why wouldn't you anticipate the blowback? Because right now at that time, he probably was elected at that time. He was the president. So why wouldn't you anticipate that? This guy, he's an odd person. But maybe because he's a drug user, like a hardcore drug user and partier. I don't know.
I figured if you're going to call him out, you can't call him out on part of it. And people said, well, why didn't you just talk about the drug use and leave the sex out? And I said, because if I said he just used drugs and then you found out later it was drugs and sex, you would accuse me of lying because I didn't mention the sex. So my opinion was, if you're going to tell the story, then you tell the whole story and let the chips fall where they may. So that's exactly what I did.
And so you made a YouTube video. By the way, I looked for it last night. I couldn't find it.
That's because YouTube gave access to my account to someone shortly after the polygraph test. And I was never given access back to it before the video was actually deleted.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. YouTube gave access to the account and the video was deleted. Microsoft gave access to my Hotmail account and all of my emails were circulating the internet, and vacation replies were set up on my email telling people that I was busy giving blowjobs and would get back with them when I was done. And oh yeah.
Wow.
And they wanted Obama to be president.
Yep. And they wanted me to be the biggest fraud and nutcase that ever existed.
So I got to ask you, I mean, I wasn't there. I can only assess what you're saying. I don't see any obvious motive for you for gain, financial gain. You're not going to get rich doing this. And in fact, you haven't. You've gotten impoverished as a result of it. But like, if I'm a reporter, well, I was a reporter at the time. I remember thinking, well, that's an interesting story. But it seemed like nobody in the media wanted to follow up with you. And some people, like Ben Smith at Politico, who's a liar and a shill posing as a journalist, I reread the piece last night that he wrote saying, oh, it's ridiculous. Right off the first graph, it's ridiculous, these claims.
Well, I think I have an answer for why a lot of reporters did not want to follow up. And I think it would have something to do with what David Axelrod told a old Chicago Sun-Times reporter, or no, a Chicago Tribune reporter, John Crutzen.
Axelrod had been a reporter in Chicago before he went into politics.
Well, John Crutzen worked for the Chicago Tribune. And John Crutzen actually came to Duluth, Minnesota and sat down with me and talked with me. And John Crutzen had told me point blank that before he had flown out, that he had spoken to Axelrod and that Axelrod had told him that they were aware of who I was and that it was their intentions to destroy me and that if any reporter had mentioned me to them, they would be completely cut off and that outlet would be completely cut off from access to the Obama campaign for the duration of the year. So I think that had a lot to do with why reporters didn't bring things up to the campaign, because everybody wanted access to, the new savior. Nobody wanted to be blackballed and denied access to a historic campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's the guy's running for president and credible information comes out that he's smoking crack and having sex with dudes, I mean, that seems like a story.
Well, it would be a story if the media really cared about telling people the truth about anything.
Yeah, they're liars. And that Ben Smith is a liar.
Oh, Ben Smith's more than a liar, but you're right.
What do you mean more than a liar?
He's a complete fraud. Ben Smith, I hear people talking about grifters. Ben Smith to me is a grifter. Ben Smith wrote an article saying that I had a 27-year
Criminal history.
Career criminal. And the funny thing is if you look my criminal history up, which I've published myself and provided from day one, my criminal history goes from 1980 to 1986. And everything I've ever done, I've owned it. I've never wasted taxpayer money. And any sentence I've ever been given, I've served. But he also said that I was a fugitive, that I was avoiding prosecution. I was trying to prevent from going to jail. None of that was true. But the media ran with it. Even Greta linked to it and said that people asked me why I would not interview Larry Sinclair. This is why. And she linked to Ben Smith's article. And notice his article was published right when I was preparing to do the press conference at the National Press Club. But hey, the National Press Club, so-called beacon for freedom of the press, they were just as involved in trying to keep the story from ever being.
It's interesting. I watched the other night, I watched your entire National Press Club appearance, and in it, you detail your intersections with law enforcement exhaustively.
Yeah.
Every time you've been arrested, you explain it. Every time you've done time, you explain it. So you didn't, from what I could tell, hide your past.
No, why? You can't. I mean, I've never hidden my past in regular everyday life. Why would I hide it in something like this?
So, I mean, you're the only person on this set who's had sex with Barack Obama. So I think you're, I don't know, expert on Obama, but you know more than most people. What's your assessment of him now?
I think he's the same grifter that he's always been. I think he's still very power hungry. I think Obama is calling the shots in the current Biden administration more than people are willing to admit. I think Obama is hell-bent. I had made a statement during that press conference that I felt that Barack Obama being elected was going to push race relations in this country backwards 50 years. I am absolutely positive I was.
Yes, I think you've been vindicated on that.
Because race relations in this country has not only gotten pushed back, but everything's about race now. Everything. Yeah. Everything is about victimization now.
It's interesting though. He's obviously a race hater, very anti-white, but he had sex with a white man. So you have to ask, like, is that real?
Oh, for him, of course. I would be willing to bet you.
I don't think Barack is anti-white, but I know he did cause some divisiveness in the country. And if you really think about it, Barack, he passed the law that gays could be married. He I think it's a executive order, right? That gays can marry, or he, pushed that law through, that gays have a right to be, or same-sex marriages. So that's one of Barack's things. So I know some of the stuff as far as introducing more legislations about gay rights and LGBT rights, it started with Obama. I think he has divided the country as far as race, but I don't know if I could say if he is anti-white. I don't know if I could. I don't think I could agree with that. Cuz even when Trayvon Martin got killed, he's never got like, oh, he's always said, "Oh, that could have been me. I was a black boy wearing a hoodie or whatever." But he's never got like really divisive. So, but you guys put in a comment, let me know what you think. I don't think he's anti-white though.
I'm not the only white person he's ever had sex with, or male anyway.
Yeah.
But hey, he's got what he wanted. He is in DC. He's living the life. He's still looked upon as being the savior of the country. And sadly, people are still giving him that power. And I think it's going eventually to be to the detriment of.
Can I just ask you one last question? How did you? I'm just thinking about it. It's very insightful because I knew a lot of people who weren't liberal who voted for Obama purely on the race question. And they weren't all self-hating, guilty whites. They were like nice, normal people who wanted to see race relations improve. And that really was the core promise of his campaign. And a lot of people bought it. A lot of smart people bought it. And I saw why they bought it. But you didn't buy it. How did you know that?
I grew up in South Carolina in the 1960s and 70s. Okay. I've been gay and knew I was gay since 6 years old. Never hid it. Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in rural South Carolina. And my first job as a kid was cropping tobacco for a family by the name of Rose that were a black family living across the road from my grandparents. So I grew up as a kid, a gay kid, in an era and an area that would get you killed being gay just as quick as you could be hanging being black. So I actually knew the other side of the track before I knew that I was supposed to act like I was above this or above that. I've watched it my whole life. I know when someone plays, when it comes to acting like they're one way and then in reality they're the biggest racists or bigots alive on both sides. Okay. I knew because he was saying one thing in the campaign, and then if people started to actually listen to what he was saying, remember there was a time when he actually told supporters to show up at a fight with a knife, get in people's face, argue with them if they didn't agree to support him, if they didn't agree to vote for him, argue with them, convince them. Come on. You don't make statements like that and tell me that you're not going to make things about race. He did.
Man, that is the one part of your story that we can say unequivocally you're telling the truth about. You saw that, and most people didn't. Larry Sinclair, I'm really grateful that you came. I wish I had interviewed you in 2008. I don't think anyone would have run the interview. But anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
You too.
Yeah, so that's interesting that he has all that information about Barack. Will people believe him? I think you have no other choice to believe him. It's kind of like he does have some damning evidence against him, and his story is believable, especially with the Donald Young. Now, Donald Young was the choir director of Jeremiah Wright. Okay, he was the choir director of Jeremiah Wright. I know Jeremiah Wright. I didn't know about Donald Young, and I didn't know he was murdered. But he was murdered back in 2007 or 2008, beginning in the 2007 or 2008, and somebody killed him in his apartment building. But if you guys remember, Jeremiah Wright, Bishop Jeremiah Wright, he is or was the pastor that ended up dying. They said it was like he died from some illness, but coming to find out, he was paying boys to have sex with them. Like, it was a whole thing about him. And like after that, the boy that came out that said he was paying to have sex with me, and he was like a real young guy. I think he was like 17 or 18. And I guess Jeremiah Wright ended up buying him a car or paying something for him. And coming to find out, Jeremiah Wright was like super gay. And 3 years later, after this whole announcement came out, he ended up dying. This article I found, this was written back in 2008. It says, angry Obama renounces ties to his ex-pastor. It says Barack broke forcefully on Tuesday with his former pastor, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, in the effort to curtail the drama of race, values, and patriotism and betrayal that has enveloped his presidential candidacy at a critical juncture. I guess Jeremiah Wright made some racist comments. He said, Mr. Wright has suggested that the United States was attacked because it engaged in terrorism on other people, and that the government was capable of having used the AIDS virus to commit genocides against minorities. And maybe he said that because it's rumored that Jeremiah Wright died of AIDS. That's the rumor that went around. Because if you looked at Jeremiah Wright, he was real fit. And then 3 years later, before he passed, he lost a bunch of weight. So his remarks also cast Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, in a positive light. He said, it says Mr. Wright, the man who presided at Mr. Obama's wedding and baptized of his two daughters. His comments were not only divisive and destructive, but I believe that they end up being giving comfort to those who prey on hate. And then I believe that they do not portray accurately in the perspective of the Black church. I mean, I don't know what he means by that. Because if you're in the Black church and you guys, I don't know if you was raised in church, they do have some sexual problems in the Black church. Like the pastors either having some relationships with younger people or extramarital affairs or having homosexual relationships. And they always will be between the bishop or the pastor and some member of the church. So, and I'm surprised because I think Bishop Wright wasn't he Pentecostal or something like that, or Church of God in Christ? So they're like real strict, and I'm surprised Obama will actually go to that church because they don't seem like they're Pentecostal people. They seem like more Baptist people or Protestant, not no darn right church holy rollers, because that's basically what Church of God in Christ is. It's like, they like really strict and holy rollers. So I'm surprised Obama would actually be in that church. But now I'm not surprised because they probably was having a gay fest at the church, and he was really good friends with this so-called Donald Young, which was the gay choir director. So anyway, do I believe the guy's story? This Sullivan guy, Larry Sullivan guy, I believe it is believable. Paranaga said they're not going to believe him. Lying is the new truth. Yeah, I think that. I think that's right. Lying is the new truth. And then you have this hope that this savior, like Tucker Carlson used the word savior, you don't want him to be tainted. Like, oh my God, our savior, he's gone. He's actually wasn't a savior. He was the devil himself. I don't think it's a big deal though. As far as him being gay or bisexual, I really don't feel like that's a big deal, but I feel like it's a big deal because he was pretending to be something else and he wasn't, you know. And actually, I feel bad for like Michelle Obama. Maybe, you know, it's one thing to have your husband cheating on you, and then you're not only cheating on me, you cheating on me with a man, and then you got a drug problem. Well, we can't really say he got a drug problem. He likes to dabble in drugs back in the day. So we really can't say, because he looks pretty healthy. He doesn't look like he has a drug problem. But who's to say? You know, who's to say? So like I said, I feel more sorry for Michelle Obama, because it's kind of embarrassment that even though she probably already knew what his problem was and tried to keep the marriage together, but who's to say that he's, you know, not over this. Maybe he's still dibbling, dabbling, being gay. You know, the internet keeps on interneting. Somebody put this out there. I put a post about Obama. Real Bill Burke sent this to me.
Go out, I've got a pregame. I'm all right, everyone. So it's Friday night. I'm getting ready to go out. This is the look. I'm feeling kind. But before I go out, I've got a pregame. And the only way I pregame is with an ice cold Bud Light. So good. Happy Friday. All right.
You guys are so crazy. Happy Friday. Yeah, so you know, like I said, Obama is, we could say Obama is bisexual. We could say that. I'll be the first one to say it. Obama is bisexual, and it's kind of embarrassing that to Michelle, like, okay, you cheated on me, but like you cheated on me with a man. How can he compete with that? There's no competing. But they didn't say he was like having sex. He had oral sex. He didn't get it. He received it. Anyway, so does that make you really gay? Put in the chat, all the guys. If you receive oral sex from a guy, does that make you gay? I don't know. Does it? This is something I found on Twitter.
What you know now, do you wish like you had a second?
I forget what the guy's name is. But he asked him, how would you feel about if you had a third term? This is really odd. Not really odd. This is kind of scary. Because Larry, that Tucker Carlson just interviewed, he said, okay, I think Obama is still pulling the strings. in the White House now, and I think he's still power hungry. And peep this response.
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. I'd be fine with that. What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term?
So he's saying that he could, if he could get away with it, he'll be down in the basement in his pajamas and pulling the strings. That's probably what he's doing to Biden right now. Oh, I'll tell you what to do. Okay. So he's probably still pulling the strings in the White House. And we know Biden won't get a second term. Thank God, hopefully, he won't get a second term. But that's to all what Larry is saying. He just proved that, because this is what Barack just said that, and this was years ago when they interviewed him. Anyway, I got one more story to tell you guys about, then I'm gotta head off because gotta make sure the kids are put to bed. If you guys haven't heard, Delta Airlines they had to turn around. The flight had to turn around over Central Virginia and landed back in Atlanta more than 2 hours after its departure. You're probably like, why, Shawan? Why did they have to turn around? Because somebody had diarrhea and the toilet was exploding. The toilet was exploding. And you probably like, what's the big deal? They just used the bathroom. But they had diarrhea so bad, it was literally leaking in the aisles. It was like spilling over. Just brown sewage spilling over in the aisles. And it got so bad, they was like, oh, hell no, we're not going to make it. We got to turn around. This was on Delta Airlines, and it says in one of the most talked about and hard to believe air travel episodes in recent memory, there are new details coming to light in the turnaround of Delta Airlines flight from Atlanta that had been bound for Barcelona on Friday night. So they were in the air crossing over Virginia, but they were headed to Barcelona. And it says a passenger had diarrhea all the way through the plane, causing the pilot to report a biohazard issue and turned the plane around before it even left American airspace. It's just a biohazard issue. We had a passenger who had diarrhea all the way through the airplane, so they want us to come back to Atlanta. And that's what the air traffic control says. Then Tuesday evening, video began circulating online that appears to show the cabin of the plane, with the diarrhea indeed running all through the plane, up along the length of the aisles, with several blankets, paper towels, and whatever else they could use to find and cover it. Just imagine, you got to be the most shittiest person in the world. Remember that Samuel L. Jackson? I'm getting tired. All these damn snakes on the plane. I'm tired of all this shit on the plane. Samuel L. That was a famous line on Samuel L. Jackson. Snakes on the Plane. A horrible movie, by the way. So they're saying that they probably charged that guy a whole bunch of money. If you really think about it, let's see. They said the identity of the passenger was not released. Why not? What the passenger might have done when the plane returned to Atlanta if they departed the airport or continued with the flight to Barcelona was not known. Our teams worked as quickly and safely as possible to get our customers to their final destination. I would throw away my shoes. I would throw away my shoes. I would throw away my shoes, and I would.
From a passenger who was on board that Atlanta-bound Delta flight
This is the news report.
that ended up with 11 people being hospitalized. 11 Live's Brittany Klein-Peter joining us in the studio now. And Brittany, what are people saying about that experience who were on that plane?
So the passenger that I spoke with tells me the Delta flight from Milan was nearing Hartsfield-Jackson when...
But this is a different report. They talking about a bumpy ride. But anyway, let me just find you that video. I saved it. Oh, here it is. It's only 7 seconds, but you can see all that brown stuff. It's everywhere. Ugh. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. But yeah, so they're saying that they didn't reveal the guy or person that caused this incident. I'm trying to see if they got a news report about it.
So much stuff happens, it runs down the aisle of a transatlantic flight, like Delta Flight 198 to be precise, from Atlanta to Barcelona, forced to turn back and make an emergency landing just 2 hours after takeoff. Here's how the pilot described the onboard medical emergency to air traffic control.
Negative. It's just a biohazard issue. We've had a passenger who had diarrhea all the way through the airplane, so they want us to come back to Atlanta.
The cabin crew was reportedly unable to contain the biohazard emergency with paper towel and vanilla-scented disinfectant. And after wheels down at Atlanta Airport, the Airbus A350 underwent a very deep clean. No word if Flight 198 was number 2 to land, but all passengers on board, including the one responsible for said biohazard, boarded another plane for Barcelona after an 8-hour delay. Delta said in part, Delta Flight 194 returned to Atlanta following an onboard medical issue. We sincerely apologise to all our customers for the delay and inconvenience.
That's all you're gonna offer me is an apology? I had to step in some shit. Mr. X, well, that person was full of shit. Oh my God, you can't make this up. This is so hilarious. But anyway, that was it. I'm not going to bore you guys for any longer. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. I am sending all my good to you. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great evening.